Hey, I want to take a moment to tell you about Anchor. I absolutely love Anchor, and it's the easiest way to make a podcast. That's why I use it. Let me explain. It's completely free, and there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and every other podcast platform out there. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Switch to Anchor and never pay a hosting fee again. What you need to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to the 99% Loco Podcast.
Hey, podcast family, welcome to another week. This week brings us to episode number 40. If you're new to this podcast, each week I'm bringing stories of Nashville and Middle Tennessee-based entrepreneurs, business owners, musicians, authors, and other creators out there. We don't just talk about the boring stuff of what happens between 9 and 5. Everyone has their own story, their own unique upbringing, and a passion for why they're doing what they're doing. I personally love the sense of community around Nashville and get my kicks from sharing these stories. This week's guest is Absurd Ty Higgins, who is a tattoo artist based here in Nashville. Ty is a graduate of Belmont's studio art program, is an incredible artist and super creative guy. This conversation goes, well, a little all over the place, and you'll quickly realize where the name Absurd Ty Higgins comes from. Ty is a huge advocate of self-improvement, and when he's not tattooing, he can be seen all over social media making crude attempts at humor, providing insights to being a successful tattoo artist, and even roasting terrible artwork and tattoos. Like I said, we cover a lot of bases from being part of a blended family, growing up in a small town, to what keeps him ticking day to day, and how to stay motivated and to continue growing. So let's get right to it. Here is my conversation with Nashville tattoo artist Absurd Ty Higgins.
Hey, wait, hold on. Stop for a second. I want to talk to you about something very important. Let's talk about time. More importantly, how time is completely non-renewable. So when you use it, it's gone. It's not like water where you can just go get another glass. It's not like money where you can just work a couple more hours and make some more. Time is finite and you only have so much time. You need to plan your days. You need to make the most of your time because once the day's gone, it's gone. It's your day. Go out there, take it, make it yours, and get the most out of it. I believe in you. All right, I'm going to go on this side now.
So let's get this rolling then. So where did the Absurd come from in Absurd Ty Higgins?
Absurd came from a girl I went to school with at Belmont. Her name was Alyssa. And she was asking me about this art project that she and I were working on because we had the same figure drawing class. And she and I were having lunch, and she said, well, when can we sit down together to work on it? And I said, well, I don't know. Friday I've got class for the first half of the day, and then I work until midnight. And she said, well, okay, well, what about Saturday? And I said, well, I can't do Saturday because I got to be back up at 6 to go back to work. And then I'm going to work on schoolwork and stuff that night. And then Sunday I've got to do stuff around my house, and I'm going to spend the last half of that day with my girlfriend. And she said, you work so much, that's absurd. You're absurd, Ty Higgins. And that's where that came from. And that's how I lived that whole year of my life, is that I was doing my tattoo apprenticeship. I was in school at Belmont with a full course schedule. And then all of the rest of the available time I was working at Ferguson. And it was just a ton of work, an absolute ton of work. And I was busy all the time.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. From what I know about you, which is very little, so I'm looking forward to diving in. That you are a hard worker. You like to keep busy. So,
absolutely.
Is your main gig tattooing? You're at Titan Tattoo, right, in Nashville?
Yeah. So tattooing is my main thing. I didn't really realize how much time I spent on it until my mom was asking me how many hours I put in a day, and I did the math on it. I'm like, between 10 and 16 a day, depending. And that's not 10 or 16 hours tattooing. That's 10 or 16 hours of work tattooing and related to tattooing. So like the 3 hours of drawing that I do before I even go into work, that counts as time. And then once I've been home for a little while and I'm not tattooing and I'm lining up stuff to post on social media, or I'm recording my podcast or doing whatever, that's work too. That's time. And that gets put on the clock.
Yeah. So let me ask you, is it tattooist or tattoo artist, or are those one and the same?
Doesn't matter. There's tattooer, tattooist, and tattoo artist. And I think that tattooist is like the British term. That's like more of an English, as in like British English term.
Sure.
And then tattooer is I think that's more of an international term. And I think tattoo artist is the more general term that's used in the United States.
All right, cool. I saw a bunch of variances. I was just wondering. So I know a lot of what you post, you call yourself a tattooist. So
right. Yeah, I just like that because it sounds professional.
Yeah.
It sounds different because people see the word tattoo artist and they go, oh, tattoo artist. And they see the word tattooist and they're like, oh, that seems like something new and exciting. It's not. It's just a different word.
So are you originally from Tennessee or Nashville?
No, originally I'm from a very small town in the middle of nowhere in Alabama. And so my parents divorced when I was like 6, and my dad moved to Nashville to be, I think, like far enough away where he could have his own life and still close enough where he could still be part of my life.
Sure.
And then he remarried, and who he remarried to was a professor at Belmont. So the summer before my senior year of college, I moved to Nashville so that I could qualify for in-state tuition and the Pell Grant and all the other Tennessee-related scholarships so that I could go to college for cheap. But I've spent just about every long weekend and every summer here in Nashville, so I kind of am native, but not really.
Yeah, yeah. Are you an only child then, or do you have siblings?
I don't have any biological siblings, but I have
a
lot of like stepbrothers and stepsisters. So when my mom remarried, I got 2 stepbrothers, so I went from being the only child to the middle child. And then my stepmom has a son and a daughter that are much older than me. It's a really weird family structure. Like I've got a brother, my stepbrother James, who has kids that are my age, because my parents, like my biological parents, waited to have kids as my stepmom got married immediately and had kids. And then her son, when he turned 18, immediately got married and had kids. And my parents had waited. And there's also an age gap between my dad and my stepmom. I think my stepmom is 7 or 8 years older than him. And then, so there's a weird family dynamic. So I have a niece and nephew that are my age.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's some real Alabama stuff right there.
Yeah. Talk about art. I mean, did you come out of the womb drawing and wanting to create?
Yes, absolutely. So my mom is very, very artistic, and she was always really into fashion, and she wanted to go into fashion, and she wanted to go study. And I mean, she's a good student, and she was a very good student in high school, and I believe got some scholarships to go to school. But once the scholarship money ran out, my family couldn't afford to keep her in school. It was just too expensive. Even back then, it was so expensive. And my mom now is in her early 50s. So, when she was 19 years old trying to go to college, she wanted to, but never really got the opportunity to pursue a career in fine art. So what happened is that she discovered that I was interested in art as a very small child. I was always drawing on stuff and writing on stuff and whatever. And I think she saw her own creativity in me and just fostered that as much as she could. So every opportunity that I, could get a gift for something for like my birthday or for Christmas or whatever, it was always art supplies and markers and paintbrushes and paint and canvases and stuff to draw on. And she just constantly fostered that thing.
So you came to Belmont once you moved to Nashville. You said you were in your senior year or earlier than that?
I moved the summer before my senior year of high school. So one of the stipulations was for me to qualify for all the in-state scholarships and stuff. I had to live in that.
Right.
I had to live in Tennessee for a year. So I had officially moved. Now, I had always spent every summer with my dad anyway. And I usually worked and, doing whatever. My dad used to take me to work with him, and I would dig trenches and I would help install sinks and stuff. And help install toilets. My dad was a plumber for a long time. And then he got out of doing all that at about the time that I was old enough to have my own job, like legally have my own job and not just working for cash. And I mean, I remember being like, 14 years old and some old dude named like Skippy or whatever trying to teach me how to solder copper to install sinks because he wanted help because it's like, we got to get this job done in 6 days and I ain't got the man. I ain't got enough people. Come here, little Higgins. Come here and I'm going to teach you how to solder. Okay. That type of thing. So this whole thing comes back to Belmont because I had spent every summer with my dad doing that same type of thing. So I had a long fight with my mom, pushing and pushing and pushing and letting her, because I was still 17. I wasn't old enough legally to switch the custody over until I was 18. And because my birthday's in April, my birthday is at the end of the school year. I was always a little bit younger than everybody else. So I had to fight with my mom to let her sign the paperwork for me to legally move in with my dad. And so after that whole thing, so I spent my entire senior year from start to finish in a completely different school system with completely different people in a whole new state and everything. And I had been in school with the same people from kindergarten through 11th grade in a very small school. And surprisingly, it was really, really nice. I think after a while, you spend enough time with the same class of, I think my graduating class in high school, if I had stayed in Alabama, would been about 140 people, something like that. It was really small.
Yeah, that's kind of the same environment I came from. I grew up in like North Central Illinois, small school.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's not much. The high school football is the main thing there, I'm guessing.
Right.
That's always, ridiculous. High school football and the cheerleading and the high school gossip and all that dumb stuff. I'm so happy to be away from all that. My first cousin, Dylan, who I live with, just had his 10-year reunion, I think, a couple of years ago. And he went back just to roast everybody. And he said it was amazing. Like, the people who you thought were just like totally normal, average guys are, there's some people that work that they're stuck in that 9-to-5 trap. You have some guys that went and started their own business and are doing really, really well now. You have some of the people who were relatively unassuming are now very wealthy and very successful. And, a couple guys that he went to high school with, like, moved to New York and one of his best friends went to dental school in New York. So he just got his doctorate, I think, a year ago. And so some people are like that. And then some of them went down the terrible backwoods Alabama Bush Light and methamphetamine route, and you always get to
Yep, sounds familiar.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to know that that's not just Alabama. That's all of small town America. That's all of small town America. That's Cheatham County, Tennessee, which is where I went to my last year of high school. That's Jefferson County, Alabama. That's wherever place in North Illinois you said you're from, and that's Munster County, Indiana, and that's Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's everywhere. Everywhere has that. Yeah. It's not a southern thing. It's a middle of nowhere poor people thing.
At what point did you start tattooing or start wanting to get interested in that? Were you doing that when you came to Nashville and enrolled at Belmont? No.
So I was always very, very interested in tattooing. My older stepbrother, who I told you about, who has the kids that are my age, he's the reason I mentioned him is because he comes up later in the story. Because when I think I was like 8 years old when I met him, or 10 years old, something like that. That's about when my dad remarried. And when I met him for the first time, he's covered in tattoos. He was a Marine for a long time. And then after he was out of the Marines, he contracted. So he lived in that kind of military environment for a long time. And the military has always been very closely tied to tattoos and tattooing. So him being all covered up in tattoos, I was fascinated with that because I had never seen that before in my little boring hometown. I had never really seen people with tattoos, and especially not seen them up close. Usually the only people that had tattoos were older people, guys that served in Vietnam and Korea, because there were some of those left around when I was a kid. I had seen those before, but I had never really seen recent tattoos that were done within my lifetime up close. And I remember asking him about how does it work, and he said that basically there's a special guy with special skills and special equipment, and you pay him money and he puts a drawing in your skin forever. And that's how it works. And I said, well, wow, how do you be that guy? And here I am. I'm that guy. So the tattooing thing, I was always really interested in it, but I decided to study fine art at school because I had taken a bunch of AP art classes in high school and I did really well in those. And I think that, my parents told me they don't care what I study. They're just like, we don't care. You can women's studies, you can study mathematics, you can study science, if you want to be a doctor and you think you can go through with it, try to be a doctor, try to be a lawyer, try to be an anthropologist, get a degree in personal finance, literally anything. just go get a degree. You have to. And so I said, well, if I can study anything, I'm studying art. It's the one thing I'm good at. And so I studied that. And then my last year of school, I had an extra semester on because I'm not super great academically. And my GPA when I left high school was kind of mediocre, honestly, because I was bored in high school and never did any work. And then my ACT scores were very low, but they still let me into college, but they put me on academic stipulation. So I had like an extra semester. So it really was the last 2 semesters of the school year, or the last 2 semesters of my schooling is when I did my tattoo apprenticeship. And that's when I started tattooing. It was about 6 months in.
I want to talk more about tattooing here, but I know you're currently building up your portfolio, building a client base.
Right.
You're building up social media presence as well. This things I see you talking about. You're talking about creative work, challenges of being an artist, and even self-development. Let's talk about that for a little bit. What is your motivation for that? With everything you're wanting to do with social media, I know you're showing your art, but one thing I saw, you're active on TikTok like a lot of other people. You talk about challenges of being an artist.
Yeah. So the reason I do all that stuff is that, one, doing good tattoos is the best way to advertise doing good tattoos. That, honestly, despite all of the stuff that I've done online, all of the stuff that I've done to have a social media presence, all the stuff that I've done to make a TikTok and make videos and put stuff on YouTube and record my own podcast and doing this and doing that and whatever, doing good tattoos and people showing their friends is still the number one way to get more clients. Gary Vaynerchuk is like the entrepreneur master. He's crazy. I'm not going to sit here and talk about everything that he's done and building so many multi-million-dollar businesses and all that stuff and running his own media company, because he's got hundreds of videos of his story and all that stuff. But he is someone that my old roommate who just moved out recently, Nathaniel showed me his content, and he talks a lot about self-development and kind of like self-mastery, which is not a term that he would use, but it's a term that I would use. And he said that just about everybody that's alive right now has a phone in their hand, and they stare into their phone all day long. So why not basically sell whatever you're doing through the phone? And his stance on it is basically run your own life, be happy doing with what you want to do. And I like fell into the rabbit hole and I watched a bunch of his videos, and I said, well, he's right. Just because I'm a tattoo artist doesn't mean that I can't also be, present online. It doesn't mean that I have to just be a tattoo artist. And being a tattoo artist is really inherently entrepreneurial because you have to market yourself. You have to run all your own stuff. You have to run all of your own social media pages. You have to do all this stuff. Being in a good shop that's well known is a huge bonus, but that means that also whoever's just coming to the shop just because they know it's a good shop, all the other artists that you work with can snag those people as well. So how do you build your own brand as your own person and do your own thing? So that's why I'm active on TikTok. That's why I'm active on Facebook. That's why I post to Instagram between 1 and 4 times a day. And my Instagram story stays chock full of stuff, is because that's the way in the modern era, that's the way that you market. So that's why I'm all over everything.
Makes sense. And, that's something that I wouldn't even think of as a tattoo artist, but you're right. You got to market yourself, and that's how you got to get your voice out, your art out. You talked about, when we started talking about this, showing good tattoos and, what you can do. What's the difference between a good tattoo and a bad tattoo?
There are a lot of differences between a good tattoo and a bad tattoo. And it really depends. I get it's hard because a lot of people don't know the difference. A lot of people can't tell the difference between a good tattoo and a bad tattoo. I guess the main thing that I look for in judging myself on whether or not I did a good job is the cleanliness of the design and my execution of the design and how that design is going to hold up with time. So if I did a really good drawing for a design, I get my tracing paper, my pencil, and I draw out something really nice and I do a full color rendering, but then I don't do the tattoo very well, that's not a good tattoo. If you do basically no drawing, but but you execute it well and it holds up over time, that's a good tattoo. If you see a lot of things that are, so if you see some lettering on somebody's arm, how about that as an example? Because a lot of people get lettering and the lines are all wiggly and shaky and the lines fall out. and the shading doesn't seem consistent and the shading seems choppy around the lettering, that's not a good tattoo. The line work should be smooth. It should be without any kind of skips or without any kind of wiggles or any imperfections. It should basically look like someone Xerox printed it straight onto the arm. It looked like it's freshly painted on, nice and bright and bold and solid. That's what separates a good tattoo from a bad tattoo.
Yeah. And most bad tattoos are those ones you get tattooed in your buddy's kitchen, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Bro, I talk so much trash on kitchen wizards and stuff. That's what I call them, kitchen wizards, because they think they can work magic in a kitchen. But the only people that work magic in a kitchen are people that work hard and run their own restaurants. Those are the people that really work magic in the kitchen. There's no magic tattoos happening in the kitchen at City House or whatever nice restaurant you want to go to.
So let's talk about that magic then. How's that happen? Do you start out with an apprenticeship? And, what are your thoughts on, the education or skills that are needed? Does someone necessarily have to go to college to get a degree in art? Or, what's your thoughts on that?
So tattooing is one of the very few careers that requires for the person to do an apprenticeship. So way back when, for most trades, which tattooing, I guess, technically is a trade because it's a service, but it's a specialized skill-based service. So I guess that would technically make it a trade. Tattooing is one of the very, very few trades, careers that require an apprenticeship. So way back when, you think about the early 1900s, a young man that wants to make something of himself might decide, I want to be a woodworker, because woodworking and carpentry and that type of thing is a good way to make money. It's a good way to keep myself fed, and there's no shortage of work for it. So if I can just educate myself, I can have something that other people don't have. And then once I have that, I can basically carve out a living for myself. And what separates the carpenter from everyone else is that the carpenter knows all the rules of how to build a good house and how to do it right and how to make a house that looks good and stands the test of time. Tattooing is the same idea. There are basically specialized techniques. There are a lot of rules, and there's a lot of discipline and a lot of hard work that goes into even becoming a tattoo artist. And you have basically a rate of washing out. So the way my mentor phrased it for me is that of all the people that want to become a tattoo artist, you may have seen my TikTok on this. I made a lot of people mad when I said this, but I'm going to say it again. Of all the people that want to be a tattoo artist, only very few ever try. Of the small amount that tries, even a smaller amount gets an apprenticeship. Of the ones that get an apprenticeship, only a very small amount actually complete their apprenticeship. And of that amount, only a very small number of those people become successful artists. And then, the pyramid keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So I wouldn't say that it's necessary to go get a degree in fine art. I'm the only one at the shop that has a degree in fine art. Karen has a degree in business administration and a master's in theology, and she's a tattoo artist. So really and truly, you don't need the fine art degree. It certainly helps, but it's not necessary. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question effectively. I tried.
So where do those people that, fall out of the pyramid go? Just to the bad shops, or they're the guys that continue to try to tattoo in their kitchens?
Some of them try to go tattoo in a kitchen. No, the people that go to the bad shops, the people that become bad artists, are the ones who they're the small percentage that made it all the way through the apprenticeship, got their license, but didn't keep working. They didn't keep learning. So you have to constantly, and this is why I'm such a big proponent for self-control and discipline and self-mastery and self-development, is because you're never good enough. You never will be good enough. You have to constantly be better. That's why, name some of the top athletes in the world. That's why LeBron James still practices playing basketball every day. That's why he still is on the court, practicing his shots, practicing his movements, in the gym, working out, staying healthy, learning new techniques, studying other players. Even the people at the top, the people at the very 1%, never stop trying to develop and push it even further. And there's a line where people give up. And a lot of people aren't capable of absolute mastery over the large majority of things. That's why only a small percentage of people become Navy SEALs. Of all the people in the military, only a very small percentage can become Navy SEALs. And that's that washout rate. I know that I'm not capable of being a Navy SEAL. I know certainly that I'm not. And it's partially because I don't care. I don't care about being a Navy SEAL.
Well, I know you haven't been tattooing that long, but, about the thing giving up, has there ever been a point already, just in a short amount of time where you said, I give up, I don't want to do this anymore? Or Have you not
No.
got to that point yet?
No, I don't think I'll ever get to that point. I love it so much. It is the one thing, besides like all the BS you have to go through an apprenticeship, like all of the stuff you have to do, those are the people that give up. That's why, like I said, maybe of all the people, you get a group of 100 people that are tattoo apprentices. They're in their first month. 90 of them will quit before the end of the apprenticeship, before the end of that year. And I mean, some of them quit, some of them mess up and get fired, some of them just stop showing up. They realize that this is too much work and I don't get enough out of this. And once they get to that point, they get to that breaking point and they just quit. It's the same with a lot of people that kind of work their way up the corporate ladder and they're trying to become the CEO of the company and they stop somewhere around manager. It's because they know they want to work harder and get paid more than being the guy that answers the phone. But they started to get kind of close to being branch manager and they started working their way up that ladder, being, assistant manager, then becoming manager, and then starting to be the branch manager. And they realize all the responsibility and they say, I don't get enough out of this. I don't enjoy this enough. I don't find this enjoyable to do. I don't get any kind of fulfillment or any kind of satisfaction in completing this thing. And so they stop at some point. Well, the thing with tattooing, though, is that once you decide to stop, you just give up. Like, you don't tattoo anymore. You got to go back to bagging groceries or working construction or whatever.
I want to talk about your podcast a little bit. It's called The Absurd Cast. It looked like you had started it. You took a little bit of a break, but I actually just listened to an episode you put out recently, maybe a few days ago. You seem like a person who's very detail oriented and a planner, which isn't a bad thing at all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It sounds like you try to make the most of your day, live it to the fullest. I know you talked a lot about journaling, in as far as importance in regards to self-development. Can you just talk a little bit about that and your philosophy there?
Yeah. So journaling, this goes back into the whole kind of self-mastery and self-development thing, is that you have to constantly keep tabs on yourself. And this is me talking about myself. Like, Ty, you have to keep tabs on yourself, bud.
Yeah.
But I have to, I found it so very beneficial for me to keep a good hold on my routine and a good hold on my schedule. Because if I don't try to keep some kind of control over myself, I absolutely succumb to being totally lazy. Like, I'll lay around and watch movies and eat chips and drink, and I'll do nothing for a whole day on my day off. I won't even leave my house for anything. I won't. And I know that about myself, and I know that I'm prone to the kind of like the sin of sloth. I'm really, really bad about being that way. And so now through the journaling and stuff, I'm able to keep track of myself, because I know that if I allow myself to just succumb to like earthly pleasure of laying around and not doing anything and watching TV all day and, eating fried chicken and doing whatever I want to do that I know is bad for me. I know it's bad for me. I'm 100% aware and I can't stop myself from doing it. Then I feel even worse the next day, because then I feel guilty. Like I threw away a whole day. Like there's so much I could have done and I threw it away and I feel bad about it. So the journaling stuff has been a way for me to kind of prevent the behavior that I feel is bad and detrimental to myself, and kind of promote myself to make the most out of every day and to be satisfied with it. So in that episode of the podcast, I talk about the Epictetus technique, and he was a Stoic philosopher who basically said that you need to every night make a to-do list for your next day and then complete that list to the letter. And then every day that you do this, you'll become more and more able to plan your day effectively, and then you'll be able to reach your absolute best top 1% abilities. So that's why I do that. That, and being a tattoo artist, there's a lot of like scheduling, and I've got this appointment at noon, and I've got that appointment at 3:00, and then I've got another appointment at 4, and I have to find a way to eat in the middle of all this. And that's one way that you can manage, that's one way for me to manage that I have all of my drawings prepared for the day and all of my appointments laid out for the week, where I know what's going to happen when, and I know that I'm prepared for it. Because the worst thing that can happen is someone shows up to get their sleeve lined out and you forgot about it and didn't draw. It's the worst. It's the absolute worst.
So when do you have time? I know we talked about this several months ago when we first started talking. So you're like in the process of learning a bunch of languages too. Are you still doing that?
Not as much because of coronavirus. Now I still speak Spanish all the time. And that's because I have a bunch of Latino clients.
Yeah, I would think that would help.
And I'm the only guy in the shop that speaks any Spanish. So I own that market. And that's me, again, that's me being entrepreneurial, me wanting to figure out, well, how can I make a little bit more money? How can I do a couple more tattoos? How can I do this? How can I do that? I'm really into language learning. That was my second choice for college. Was if I told myself if something happened and I couldn't get into the art program, or I broke my hand and couldn't draw or whatever, that I was going to study foreign language. So even in college, I somehow found the time I did like an online course for Russian, and I took like 6 months of Russian, and I've forgotten almost all of it now. I can still read a little bit. Their language is, they have 33 letters in Russian. So they have letters for noises that like we don't have in English, which is why they have more letters. And they also have a stressed and an unstressed consonant letter. And studying Chinese, and I've got a friend that speaks Romanian, so of course I'm trying to learn that too, just to be funny. And my girlfriend's family is Italian, and she feels weird because she's I think one of the first ones to grow up not knowing how to speak Italian because no one spoke it in the house. Like her dad grew up and his grandparents, so my girlfriend's great grandparents, spoke Italian. They were from Italy, and their kids, her dad's parents, so her grandparents, spoke Italian as a second language. But her dad grew up kind of knowing it, kind of not, and she grew up not knowing any at all. And so she and I have been kind of learning Italian together. It's like this thing that connects her to her family. But yeah, language learning is really good for your brain. It's very good for your brain. It's like you're basically just forcing your brain to do push-ups, and it forces your brain to, you make connections with words that you never really would have before. You realize the influence that Latin really has on English by looking at some of the words in Spanish that are more closely related to Latin than they are to English. But the word kind of cognate is the word for it. It's words that sound the same and mean the same things, but aren't exactly the same. Cognates are the same in a lot of languages. So you have the word, to come back or to return in Spanish is revolver, which is literally written out the word revolver. So to revolve, to come back around, which is where you get the word revolution and all that stuff. And you find these kind of connections through all of the different languages where they've either interacted with one another or where one language has set the base for another language or whatever. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Like Spanish has this huge influence on Tagalog, which is the Filipino language, because the Spanish basically conquered and had rule over the Philippines for like 400 years. And so now the old Spanish from like the conquistadors was the Spanish that they were speaking. And a lot of those words that exist in the kind of very old style of Spanish that's not spoken anymore, a lot of those words still exist in the Philippines. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it seems like something that I would want to try to do is learn some more languages if I had time, but it's just, it's making time to do that. So
it's very hard. And that's where the journaling technique comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll be amazed at the weird parts in your day where you have an hour that you just like not doing anything. And that's one of the reasons that I started doing that technique, is because it allows me to, I can look up in the morning. Like I wake up at 6. I like to give myself like 45 minutes in the morning or an hour just to exist, like walk around, have my cup of coffee, stretch, kind of scroll through Facebook and stuff in the morning, seeing what the absolute dumpster fire was that's happening politically or whatever while I was asleep, just so I can stay informed on like who's everybody mad at right now? This guy? Okay.
Right.
Then I can just stay informed. So in case I see a meme later, I'll be able to laugh at it. So, then at 7 o'clock, I'll do some drawings. At 8 o'clock, I'm doing this and that. And then it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm not doing anything. Well, what am I going to do for that 9 o'clock hour? I don't want to just sit around because I've got all this other stuff I've been doing. And the ball will be rolling at that point. So at 9 o'clock, why not? Let's just run a mile. At sometime within the 9 o'clock hour, let's run a mile. And if even running that mile was the only thing that you do in that 9 o'clock hour, you didn't throw it away. You still have it. You still used it. And it still belongs to you. And so that 9 o'clock hour could be running a mile. That could be doing weightlifting. You could meditate. You could read a book for an hour, or for a half hour, or whatever. You could go do that thing to your car that needs to be done. I really need to do that oil change. You can go take care of that in the 9 o'clock hour, or whatever. And that's when you might study Spanish or go study Chinese or whatever language you want to learn. There's an opportunity right there at the beginning of your day that you may have otherwise overlooked.
I know you said you did some volunteering too to fill up your days too. Are you still doing that?
So this morning I woke up at like 7 and I drove back from Alabama. I was with my family for the 4th of July. I got back. My girlfriend left, got in her car that she left at my house, and she drove back to her place to go do whatever. And then I went to the bird sanctuary and volunteered.
How does one get interested in, so it's the Exotic Avian Sanctuary of Tennessee, right?
Yeah, East, EAS.
Okay, yeah. So how does one just say, hey, I want to get involved with this with parrots?
I wanted to volunteer because I was so, like I said, I was coming out of that senior year of college where I was forced to work all the time because I had to eat, and I didn't really want to steal food. So I had to manage my classes and my course load with working. And then I also had to find a way to keep, myself sane by having kind of extracurricular things, exercising, go climbing the rock wall or whatever. So anyway, when I got back to reality, I guess, after graduation, I was only tattooing. That was it. 5 days a week. I had 2 whole days off back to back, which I had never had before. In my whole life, I've never had 2 days off back to back. I didn't know what to do with myself. So, for the tattoo world, you work Saturdays. That's your big money-making day is Friday, Saturday. So usually the 2-day weekend is Sunday, Monday. And I found that I was able to get everything done around my house in a day. So all of the, going and buying groceries, washing the clothes, doing laundry, cleaning the house, cleaning the bathroom, meal prep, everything. I was able to get it all done on a Saturday or Sunday on my first day off. And then I had this old second day off that I didn't know what to do with. And I was like, I got to do something. I'm bored. I was miserable laying around the house doing nothing. And I felt guilty. I was like, I'm doing well enough for myself. I'm not worried about paying bills anymore. Because in college, you worry because you can't work that many hours. So you get nervous about paying bills and all that stuff. And I got to the point where I was just like, I need to do something with this time. And I've always been interested in exotic birds. I've always thought they were super cool. And I thought about volunteering at like a dog rescue, like a dog pound or a place like that. And I thought that anybody can work with dogs. Not everybody can work with birds. I feel like that would be even more challenging. So that's why I decided to do that. Then I love animals. I absolutely love animals. Like, people don't want to admit this, but exotic birds are very, very, very intelligent. And they're more, I'm not going to say they're more intelligent than dogs and cats and that type of thing, but they are far more intelligent than you'd expect. And they have the capacity, the way that they learn and the way that you know how cats and dogs are different in the way that you would punish a cat or a dog for doing something wrong, or they're very different. It's literally a different animal. Exotic birds are even more different than that because they are very emotional and they get upset and they get irritated and they get scared and they get, and then hormone season comes around and they're just weird and aggressive for no reason. It's just because they're hormonal. They're strange animals and they're a lot of fun.
I want to do this little fun thing here. So,
okay.
I have tattoos. I know what it's like to, be kind of on the other side. And so I was looking at this list that said things you didn't realize annoy a tattoo artist.
Oh boy!
And I just wanted to, I just wanted to get your thoughts on these, if you agree or not.
Okay.
So one of them was bringing lots of friends with you.
Yeah, don't do that. I think and we've been able to actually to enforce this because it's Corona time right now. So we've been able to tell people, it's like, hey, you can bring a friend. You can bring one friend. And even then, be sure you ask your artist if it's okay. Because, some of us would be like, I'm nervous about the virus, man. I think maybe you should just come by yourself and then leave. But no, bringing a whole bunch of people into a tattoo shop. It's already loud inside the tattoo shop. We have the tattoo machines make noise. The music is loud. And now you've got you and your 9 friends all talking super loud over each other. And it becomes hard to focus on the tattoo.
So what about expecting to get a tattoo right then and there when you walk into a shop?
Depends on what it is, honestly. Like some stuff, like small stuff, if we have an artist open, you can get it done right then. And for a long time, that was me. Because I was like the new guy at the shop. I didn't have that huge client base. And so when someone comes in, like, hey, I want to get my, my boyfriend's name tattooed on me or whatever. I want to get my dad's name or whatever, some lettering. I want to get this little yin yang symbol or this little peace sign or whatever kind of small thing that you could just print it off and do it real quick. I was that guy. And so in some instances you can, and in some instances you can't. I don't think you can get exactly what you want done whenever. You can't walk in and be like, yeah, I want to get my whole back done. It's like, that's not how that works, bud.
What about talking too much about price?
Again, it depends on what it is. So if it's something that, like, I try not to do anything exactly like the picture people bring in, because I don't want to trace somebody else's design, because that's a big no-no. You don't do that. That's theft. Like, technically speaking, that is theft.
Right.
And I don't like stealing other people's stuff. I like making my own stuff. So the price really comes down to how big the design is and how much time it takes. So what I normally do is like $120 an hour, depending on whatever it is. And I work very steadily and I work pretty quickly. And so I can get a lot done in 3 hours. For $350, I can get a ton of stuff done. And that really, but I can't give a defined price until I really do it. I can spitball and say, well, I've done this design, a design very similar to this one, placed about the same size, and it took me 4 hours. So I can roundabout guess that it would be about 4 hours of work. So between, I don't know, $350 and $450, depending, give or take. And if it only takes 2.5 hours, you only owe me for 2.5 hours of work.
Well, cool, man. Your story is really cool, and I'm glad we finally got to talk. I really think others can learn from you. It's not something typical that you'd see from a tattoo artist, of just being so, focused on continuing to learn and, continually just to stay motivated.
Yeah, I try. Thanks for saying that, man. It really means a lot. And I'm excited to finally be able to get, it was only an hour, but it's exciting. I got into the whole podcasting thing because of Gary Vaynerchuk. And one of the things that he does at the end of the year every year is he does this like a recap. So he'll talk about everything he did right, everything he did wrong, why he was right about certain things, why he was wrong about certain things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at the very end of the thing, this is in, I think, December of last year, he said, if you're not on TikTok and you're not doing a podcast, you're messing up and you're shooting yourself in the foot for your business, because this is where things are going. Things are going towards podcasts. Things are going towards TikTok. So you need to be active on these things. And if you're not, you are throwing away a huge opportunity.
So speaking of social media, how can listeners find out more about you or find out about where you work?
So the shop account is Titan Tattoo TN. That's also titantatattoo@gmail.com. That's the way to email the shop if you want to talk to the shop, if you want to get tattooed by, Paul or Josh or Wes or Brittany or Kelsey or Karen or Justin. You want to get pierced, all that type of thing. We can answer all your questions through email and Facebook Messenger and Instagram Messenger. To see my work, it's Absurd Ty Higgins, and it's the same on every social media account. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, all of it. It's ABSURDTYHIGGINS. That's me.
I really hope you enjoyed the episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can always email me at 99percentlocalpod@gmail.com. Or you can actually drop by the contact page on the website and send a voice message that may appear in a future episode. Speaking of the website, you can find it at 99percentlocalpod.com. And while you're there, make sure you catch up on any and all past episodes. If you'd like to support the show, you can do it in a few different ways. Please follow the podcast on Instagram or Facebook at 99percentlocalpod. Leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast. The best thing you can possibly do is share this podcast with your friends who might want to check it out. Lastly, would you consider contributing to this podcast on a one-time or ongoing basis? All contributions that I receive, 10% of that goes to the Well Outreach in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And until next week, stay safe and be kind to those around you.